Okay, don't freak out, but I think this might be the most intense roller coaster on the West Coast and actually one of the best coasters on the planet. Yes, I'm talking about Riddler's Revenge, a B&M Standup coaster located at Six Flags Magic Mountain in Valencia, California. I just don't know what Warner Stengel is thinking when he built this thing. But this is going to be a full in-depth review. Before this gets started, this is just my opinion. You do not have to agree with this. But yeah, anyways, let's get started with the stats. We have a height of 156 feet, a top speed of 65 miles per hour, and a track length of 4,000 feet, a little over 4,000 feet actually. And this thing is insane. You are just hauling through that layout. And speaking of the layout, that moves on to our next thing, the layout. So let's break down this layout one by one with the POV. First, you're going to climb that 156-foot lift hill and dive down this giant curve dropped in that back row. You will be whipped down, so be prepared for that. You will then be sent into this loop that is very forceful, actually. Yeah, great vertical loop. Then you will be going into a dive loop and pulling an extreme amount of positive G-forces in these valleys. Go into the second dive loop, an extreme amount of positive G's right here, no break whatsoever. This incline loop, so many positives, this insane whip while experiencing positives and laterals at the same time. And the mid-course break run, all that time from the second dive loop, after that was until the mid-course, that was all positive G's. So you're going to go into that corkscrew right there, do that quick snap to the left, which is pretty fun. And this is probably the most graceful part of the ride. You don't really pull any forces here or anything, kind of just meandering around, just giving a break from to the riders. And you dive straight back into the ride, pulling so many positive G's there into this super whippy and insane corkscrew. So many positives there. And then you're going to kind of get a good amount of forces going up into that final break run. And that is the ride. So in my opinion, this is a crazy layout. This thing is insane, and that brings on to our next category, which is the overall intensity of the ride. And this thing is insane, like really. I'm gonna say that a lot during this video, so be prepared, but it's true. During the valleys, every single valley will provide an extreme amount of positive G's. All these inversions are super forceful. Besides the vertical loop, which just has some okay hang time, other than that, literally every single valley, every single inversion is super forceful. I wouldn't be surprised if this ride hits 5 G's on multiple parts. That's how crazy this ride is. So if you couldn't tell already, I'm going to give this a 10 on intensity. 1 out of 10 out of 10. So it would be on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 out of 10. That's how crazy this ride is. It's more intense than X2, I'm sorry. It's really, really good. The inversions are whippy. All the pacing is incredible. Every single moment is crushing you with positive G's. And in fact, this ride is so intense, I could barely even speak on the brake run. I was literally speechless, and you feel physically sick getting off of this ride. That's how crazy it is. It's just so insane. But let's move on to the next category I'd like to talk about, and that is the trains. So a lot of people like to complain about the trains on B&M Standup coasters, and they're really not that bad. Come on. I would say I would give the trains a perfect, probably like a 9 out of 10. Just because the OTSRs are a bit, like, huge. They're kind of big. But other than that, even then, they're really not that bad. Maybe I'm being a little picky. But yeah, really, this ride has great trains. I would take a stand-up train over a forest or just any type of sit-down train any day. That's how good these trains are, and I'm glad that they have a screen, because I do not want this to be converted into a forest. The stand-up experience makes it so much better and is definitely an amazing train, and it makes me pretty excited to ride some other stand-up coasters, because this thing is insane. But let's move on to the next category I would like to talk about, and that is the overall smoothness. And for this, 10 out of 10. This coaster is insanely smooth. There is no rattle whatsoever on this coaster. A lot of people say, B&M rattle, da da da. No, this coaster is butter smooth. It's smoother than butter, okay? This thing is great. I just, it's super smooth. Like, there is no rattle anywhere. It feels like glass, like just straight up glass. That's how smooth it is. It feels like you're just flying. It feels like you're not even riding on a track. That's how smooth it is. There is zero headbanging whatsoever. You do not have to keep your head forward on this ride. I've kept my head back on at least one of my rides on this, and I got free rides on this, by the way, and no headbanging found whatsoever. So you do not have to worry about banging your head or a B&M rattle, because this thing is glossy smooth. So this definitely gets a 10 out of 10 on the smoothness category. Now let's talk about where you're going to want to sit on a coaster, because many coasters vary on how good they're going to be depending on where you sit. And personally, I think this is 100% a back row ride. This thing is insane in any seat you'll sit in, but the back row is definitely by far the most intense row on this coaster, and it is definitely a back row ride. You're not going to want to miss it. Even though I rode in the third row, and it was insane. Like, you'll enjoy this coaster in any seat you sit in. It's going to be intense no matter what, but back row is definitely the way to go, especially if you want some extra whip going down that curb drop, and going through the corkscrews and some of the inversions. It has some insane whip, and it's definitely the most intense row on this coaster, so definitely a back row ride. Now I kind of want to just talk about overall where this ranks in the park, just to show how good it is. Six Flags Magic Mountain is the thrill capital of the world, and currently it holds the title to the world's most roller coasters in one park, with 19. And when you have 19 different coasters, it's very hard to rank them up. But for me, when I got off of Riddler's, it was without question basically that it was top 3 in the park, and it is by far the second best coaster in the park, only behind X2. I'm not joking. That's how crazy this ride is. So this is by far the number 2 spot in the park, and if I ever get a really good ride on it, who knows, maybe it could be number 1 and my number 2 coaster overall. That's how insane this thing is. In fact, it is my number 3 coaster that I've ridden, only behind X2 and Ghost Rider. It is crazy. It's just insane. Like, it really is. So, what is my final score for Riddler's Revenge? Well, my final score for Riddler's Revenge is a 10 out of 10. This is seriously one of the most underrated coasters I've ever ridden, and I feel like it's the most underrated coaster in the entire state of California and on the entire West Coast, and just overall one of the most underrated coasters in the world. It's so good. The stand-up feature makes it so much better. It's glassy smooth. It's super intense. It's the most intense coaster on the West Coast. It's just insane, and I highly recommend riding this when you're at the park. Like, this is a must ride when you're there, especially if you eat up intensity. If you enjoy X2, trust me, you're gonna love this thing, because it's even more intense. While I do think X2 is a better ride, this by far brings the intensity way more. So overall, 10 out of 10 for this coaster. It's just insane if you couldn't already tell. And that's really all I have to say. This thing is just crazy. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little review of Riddler's Revenge, one of the craziest coasters ever built. And I'd love to hear your opinion on this ride if you've ridden it. And if you haven't ridden, what do you think of it? Do you think it looks stupid? Do you think it looks insane? Have I hyped it up for you? What do you think? But overall, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time here on GeForce Thrills.